How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you are allowed to ask anything that you like about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated or left wing or right wing it might be. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the place where you can ask all your questions and no one's going to make fun of you or judge you for not being informed enough or not having learned this stuff in high school. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. It's the Rocketeer on TikTok. Ooh, hello there. What a delightful change of pace. Awesome sauce. Great to see you. Anima, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask anything that you like about politics, and I will give you an answer, regardless of how simple or complicated your question might be. What's up, Lauren? Great to see you again. We got a real regular bonanza happening over on TikTok so far. All right, welcome everybody. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I am here to answer all your questions about politics. My wife is doing pretty good, Awesome Sauce. Thanks for asking. So, yeah, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're something in the middle, something on the outskirts, everybody is welcome here. Nobody is here to yell at you or get into fights with you. If you're looking for one of those shows where Democrats yell at Republicans and vice versa and they call each other names, this is not the show for you. This is just engaging in good faith on the substance. If the Rocketeer says, well, now I just got the purple app notification, lol. Well, you're here now. It's the Rocketeer, so we'll just go ahead and make you a mod here. Jeff Wolf says, funny, usually more truth comes through comedy than politicians. I don't usually truck with people talking about how all politicians are dishonest or all politicians lie. I feel like that paints every politician with too broad of a brush. And if you're saying that AOC and Trump lie the same, then I feel like you are doing a disservice to AOC, and I feel like you are letting Trump get away with a lot by lumping him in with other politicians who don't lie at all, or at least lie less. What's up, Willie? Great to see you again. So yeah, everybody's welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I'm not here to fight, harass, bully, or spread misinformation. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. I know that things are really weird in politics these days. What's up, D. Scott? Because of all the misinformation and propaganda that's running around rampant out there. I'm actually kind of curious about something unrelated to all of my regulars. How long of a delay is there between when you post your thing and when I say, hey, what's up? Because to me, it feels like there's not a delay, but sometimes I feel like there's a long delay based on when I say things and I see people responding to them. So yeah, everybody's welcome here. What's up, Anima? I'm saying hey now, so you can let me know what the delay is on that. Shawnee Flytrap, good to see you too. Just a lot of people saying hi. No, no politics questions so far. Let's get to these politics questions. What's up, Mihu? Great to see you again. So yeah, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. Salty says, AI means the cost of production no longer tied to the cost of labor. Does this make the tariffs good? That seems to be like a real stretch, Salty, to try to make it so that the tariffs seem good. The fuck me, what is the name of that agency? The Cato Institute, which is very much not a left-wing institution, just published a big study about how the tariffs are basically leaving the America's economy behind. We are less profitable, less safe. Our reputation is worse. They're just like bad for like a whole bunch of reasons. Rob says, "Are you the bad guy on Superman movie from another planet?" I don't know if I've seen that movie. Some dude says, "Do you think the Republicans?" Good to see you again, some dude. Do you think the Republicans are going to be able to get voter ID laws changed before the midterms? I think it's unlikely. It's possible, but it is unlikely. I think it is unlikely that they will get rid of the filibuster. I think it is unlikely that even if they did pass that law, that they would be able to institute those changes before the midterms happen. Speed Freak says, "Are you the Subway guy?" No, I was not in the Epstein files. What's up, JP? What's up, John? John says, "When I've had Twitch and YouTube open at the same time, your stream usually has a 20 to 30-second delay on YouTube." Well, that's interesting. JP, good morning. Twitch is delayed several seconds. YouTube is a couple seconds slower than that. But also, if I have to get it from my desk, I switch on YouTube to my desk. There's 5 to 6 second delay between YouTube. Oh, that's interesting. Well, how about that? All right. JK says, are you going to watch Trump's State of the Union? Probably not. I get really annoyed watching him talk. Lauren says, do you see how New Jersey is combating ICE? Think it will pass? Can every state do it? I actually have not seen what New Jersey is proposing. Shawnee Flytrap says, any idea why no Republicans showed up to the Wexner appearance? Is Wexner the guy that was in the Epstein files? What's up, Rob? Let's see here. My name is not Jarrell. Oh, Jor-El. Jor-El. Well, kind of a stretch, Rob, but I'm with you. Fletch Lives Again says, I feel like Trump and his lawyers sit around all day trying to figure out new ways to circumvent the law. What do you think? I mean, I don't know. It's like, I don't think that they care. I think that they are looking at the things that they can get away with, and the things they can't get away with, then they have their brainstorming sessions on, all right, well, how can we do this even if we're not going to be able to get away with it, All right. T8 Who says, has Trump ever paid a contractor in his life? Probably not. Joey, great to see you again, says, do you support what ICE is supposed to do? Yeah, ICE is supposed to be deporting the worst of the worst, but that's not what they're doing, obviously. Jackson says, hi, I'm from Ontario, just wondering what the Supreme Court does. The Supreme Court is sort of like the arbiter of the law. So, there's this law that's written basically, and it says you are not allowed to kick a soccer ball on a Tuesday. And then somebody kicks a soccer ball on a Tuesday, and then that person goes to court and goes to jail, but then there's appeals because the lawyers get to be like, well, what counts as a soccer ball? What counts as Tuesday? Does it count what time zone they were in? What's a kick? Is it this? Is it that? So they basically go through all of that. Additionally, it is possible for the Congress to write laws or for the president to write executive orders that are against the Constitution. And so that then goes through the judiciary, and the Supreme Court gets to decide, okay, you wrote a law that says everybody named Steve goes to jail. That seems to be unconstitutional, so we're going to strike that law down. Stuff like that. All right. Magaverse says, comment for team points. I'm about that. GSDM says, do you support socialism? I support socializing certain industries that have failed the American public, like healthcare, housing, and higher education. Good Trouble says, can you yodel? I think so. The Fixer Mike says, we need Massey and Khan to file impeachment on Pam Bondi for perjury. I mean, yeah. I mean, the list is long of people in the Trump administration who should be impeached and sent to jail. Bradford says, I predict in 50 years or less the U.S. will break up into smaller countries. Thoughts? It's a possibility. I don't think it's likely, though. Comrade Pung says, if communism always falls apart, why does the CIA need taxpayer money to make it fail? I think that it is 100% accurate to say that nations that have tried to be more left-leaning have been thwarted by American intelligence operations and the billionaire class trying to steal resources from those countries. And it also depends on how you're defining communism, because, like, I would not say that Russia or China or Cuba are actually, communist. I think that they're more dictatorships. Some dude says, do you think a Democratic president will be able to do anything new before fixing everything Trump did? Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably like a bunch of different things, like sometimes you do things that are new and intended to fix the things that happened in the past. There's going to be a big fight about whether or not if Democrats take over Congress and the White House, there's going to be a big fight about whether we should be focusing on fixing problems or on changing the system. And they're going to be centrists who are going to be arguing for, we just need to return back to normalcy. And then there's going to be progressives saying, no, we need bold action that changes the way that the system works because the system is inherently unfair. I am more of a progressive, but I'm also like, we have to be prepared for that fight. We have to recognize that centrists are not the enemies of progressives and progressives not the enemies of centrists, that we need to sort of work together to make this progress happen. And if you don't like centrists, then do the work to make sure they don't win their primaries. Okay, Worst says, politics, yes or no? Yes. Drake says, what time is it there? It's 3:23 a.m. here. Well, it's 11:24 a.m. here. Bitnevo says, do you think Marco Rubio is conflicted prosecuting Trende Awagra when he's the number one customer? That's pretty funny. Opinionated Minority says, how big of a puddle do you think the billionaires would fill with tears if we taxed excessive profits? A lot, let's see here. Odinson says, do you think free market healthcare sans insurance could work? I do. I'm not going to die on the hill of making private insurance illegal if we have. Wait, hold on a second. I'm sorry. I misread your question. Do you think free market healthcare sans insurance could work? Ooh, that's a good question, Odin-san. And I'm gonna say no. Like, I think that the insurance market is only one part of what is wrong with private healthcare. And I think that we all benefit from switching from a private healthcare market to a more socialized healthcare model. Oh, thank you, Gio. Appreciate that. The Fixer Mike says, bothered Crockett and Tallarico are going to head to head. I hope they can keep it amicable. Yeah, I don't know what they have said about the other so far, but Tallarico seems like a pretty chill, leading with love kind of a person. I know Jasmine Crockett's more of a firebrand, so yeah, hopefully there's not any fisticuffs between the two of them. Okay, General Wokowinki says, are you a communist? No. Name emoji says, health insurance companies, need to go bankrupt. I'm down for that. Mark Samet says, what do you think about capitalism? It's fine. It is a flawed system that has been transferring money from the 99% to the wealthy for a really long time. It needs regulation, but it also needs to work in tandem with communist systems and socialist systems. Like, we need socialized medicine, and we need to be incentivizing companies to be employee owned. Joey says, are you from California? I am from California. I was born and raised in California. I have lived in Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, London. I've traveled the globe. Ziggy says, what do you think about identitarianism? I don't know what that means. Joey says, why are California taxes so high? Just wondering. Well, there's a bunch of different reasons for that. There are certain initiatives that we have signed into law, like transitioning us to green energy, that costs a lot of money right now, but then will eventually lower energy costs. It is a very popular place to live, and so because everybody wants to live here, then real estate is at a premium, which means that property taxes are also at a premium. There are a lot of things that it takes to maintain California because it's a very unnatural environment. Like, it's supposed to be a swamp. It's not supposed to be a city. So, yeah, like transferring potable water from the mountains to here is a whole fucking thing. There's a lot of infrastructure costs because we're a very car-heavy city as opposed to Los Angeles is a car-heavy city. You asked me about California, but I really was thinking about Los Angeles in general. But yeah, it's not really a higher tax state for people in the 99% so much as it is a high tax state for the billionaire class. Like, we have a progressive tax structure in California where you pay more if you make more and you pay less if you make less. John Abbott says, I'd rather have Crockett in office, but with how she's been a major hate target for the GOP for several years, I think Tallarico has a better chance of winning the general. Yeah, I don't really have an opinion about which one would do a better job in the Senate. I just think that if I was living in Texas, I'd probably go Tallarico for the same reason, John Abbott. Okay, Gabriel Jackson says, why don't people talk about Republicans taking money from AIPAC? That's a really good question, Gabriel. It really does seem like we only drag the Democratic Party through the mud for voting to continue to send money and weapons to Israel, for working with Netanyahu administration, and getting pushed around by AIPAC, which is weird because if you're looking for the political party that will stand up to AIPAC, that will stand up to Israel, it is the Democratic Party. There are a large number of politicians within the Democratic Party who are already voting against sending more money and weapons to Israel, and yet the Democratic Party is the only one that we yell at for it, which is really weird. Opinionated Minority says, do you think Greg Abbott will ever stand up to Trump? No, I do not. Ziggy says, what's your opinion on the Patriot Front? I don't know what that is. It feels like a right-wing militant organization. Odin says, could you elaborate on private healthcare issues, please? Absolutely. So there are weird profit structures involved in healthcare where there are certain things that just cost a lot of money, but there are other things that just end up being these money sinks. Like hospitals in general. There was this huge story about this in Time magazine like 15 years ago or so, about how everything in the hospital is expensive. They charge you like $80 for one aspirin and shit like that. And this guy was basically like, where does this money go once it is collected? And it is not into administrative costs. It's in expansion, and it's in building more wings and yeah, it's I forget. I read the article 15 years ago, so I'm losing some specifics here. But yeah, it is prohibitively expensive, and yet we desperately need it. And it is better for everybody to be able to get that healthcare. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with things that are so expensive just because of inherently they are difficult to do and require a lot of schooling to be an expert in? You subsidize those costs by taxing everybody a little bit and then giving it to people for free. Some dude says, if we were able to break up these bigger companies, which are the companies would you go to first? Probably start with like banks and social media. Those seem to be the most toxic. Ziggy says, what's your opinion on pan-European nationalism? I don't know enough about that. Thomas Kuhn says, I lived in Canada and I will take our system anytime. I would take it as well. JP says, opinions are like assholes. They're bigger in Texas. That's pretty funny. John Abbott's JP says California expensive, higher minimum wage, free school lunches, Medicare, Medi-Cal, Medicaid. We get much more. Yes, that is another excellent point about quote unquote higher tax states, is that you get more for your money. Ziggy says, are you American? Yes, I am. Steve Cage says, thoughts on BlackRock and Vanguard? I'm against them. Joey says, did you hear about the Rhode Island shooting in an ice rink? I play hockey, so that's been on my mind a lot. I did not hear about that, Joey. But I mean, I want to stop gun violence. That's the reason why I am encouraging people to vote for Democrats, because they are the party of trying to do something to stop gun violence. Comrade says, why does China have higher satisfaction rates and enact more popular policies if it's a dictatorship? I mean, you can do both. Like there are definitely dictators who have done things that have been popular in their countries. I also don't know how accurate you can take polling that happens in China when you get punished for thought crimes in China. So that's the problem of living in dictatorships, is that you can't say I don't like this, because then they send you a fucking work camp. Blake D says it's because China doesn't account for all people. I'm sure that's accurate as well. Joey says both sides want to end gun violence. They disagree on how. I disagree with that, Joey. If you listen to Republican politicians and Republican talking heads, they will say things like gun violence is a fact of life here in America. Best case scenario, they say what we need to do is put more money into mental health care, because if we can solve mental health care, then people won't go crazy and use guns to murder people. But then as they're saying that, they're also defunding healthcare, and they're also making it more difficult for people to get healthcare. So they're not trying to solve the problem. They refuse to do anything to try to curb the ease of access for these extremely dangerous machines. So yeah, I completely reject the idea that both parties are trying to end gun violence, or even that they're both trying to say that they end gun violence, Blake D says, I don't think anyone is for gun violence. I'm not even Republican, but that is false. Blake D, I've been paying attention to this issue for a very, very, very long time. So I can tell you exactly what Republicans say about this. I'm talking about politicians, not voters. I can tell you exactly what right-wing talking heads say about this, like Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson. And I can tell you what their policies are, what they have done. And everything that I am telling you is that Republican politicians, Republican talking heads do not give a shit about solving this problem, are actively making it worse. All right. Joey says, no more Republicans want to fight fire with fire, give more guns to people to protect themselves. Yeah, I don't know if I would call that normal, though, Joey. Like, do we really want to live like fucking the Wild West, where we're all walking around with a fucking 6-shooter on our hip, and there's just like everybody's just getting gunned down in the street left and right, Joey says, don't listen to Ben or Carlson. They don't speak for normal voters. But they do, because those are the talking heads that hype up the politicians that those Republican voters then vote for. Joey, it's like, how am I supposed to tell you what the Republican Party stands for if you're telling me that the Republican Party is actually the voters who don't agree with the people that they are voting into power? It doesn't make any sense. These are the ways that I believe that we should judge the political parties. We should judge them by what they do, what they say they're going to do, what their platforms are, and what they've done in the past. And in no part of that equation is the secret desires of the people that are voting for them. All right, Alex says, press down on the host screen. Oh, I appreciate you. Thomas Koo says, better than like living in China or Russia. I mean, yeah, I'll still take America. Blake D says, what would your suggestion be for combating gun violence? So, short answer, let's try something. Republicans refuse to try anything. So let's try something. Something is better than nothing. Here are some things that we could try. We could try having mandatory gun licenses. Like when you want to drive a car, you should have a license for owning a gun. Mandatory safety and training that gets re-upped like every 5 years or something, the same way with driver's licenses, and mandatory gun insurance. If you're going to own a gun, you're going to have insurance to potentially pay for any damage that gun causes. There's just a couple of ideas, and if that doesn't work, we can go from there. But yeah, let's start. Let's start with that, and let's start with actually funding healthcare and making it more available to people. All right. Bobot says, Jarrett, America first or Israel first? I mean, I'm definitely not Israel first. America first is sort of like a slogan for the MAGA party. It was also originally a slogan for the American Nazi Party during World War II. So I wouldn't say America first either. I might say let's take care of American citizens, and also let's do foreign aid that makes sense for both global peace and prosperity and for the prosperity of America's citizens. Alrighty. JP says China has a ruling party, not a single dictator. I mean, I don't know how many people in the party would be able to stand up to Xi Jinping. That to me says dictatorship. Okay, let's see here. Dead Adventure says, what are your thoughts on Invention Secrecy Act? I don't know anything about that. Comrade says, is there any data that would change your beliefs about China, or is your belief unfalsifiable? Of course, I'm open to data that will change my beliefs about China. Opinionated Minority says, can you explain the hate of Gavin Newsom in California? I have no idea why people say they hate him. So the reason why people hate Gavin Newsom is there's good reasons and there's bad reasons for hating Gavin Newsom. The number one reason why people hate Gavin Newsom is that he's a Democrat. And the neutral position for every single American is that if you're a Democrat, you suck. Because you're either a Republican and you think the Democrats are evil, or you are a Democrat and you believe that whatever Democrat we're talking about is either too far to the left or too close to the center. And so Gavin Newsom, people hate him for both being too far to the left and too far to the right. I have a list of things that Gavin Newsom did that I don't like, and a list of things that he did that I like. And I brought this to my centrist friend, and he hated all the things that I liked, and he liked all the things that I hated. So, I called Democrats Schrodinger's political party because they are simultaneously too far to the left, too far to the right, doing too little, doing too much. They are both opening the border and also deporting more people than Donald Trump. So it's like, which is it, guys? There are some things about Gavin Newsom. He has, he has unilaterally killed some progressive legislation. He has done some kind of like sketchy campaign finance stuff, like he wrote in a carve out for certain restaurants that bake bread, and for the minimum wage law that was passed. And then it turns out that the only store that kind of fits that description is Panera, and Panera gave him a ton of money to help him his re-election campaign, So like there's a bunch of stuff that's like that. Overall, though, I think he's being overhyped as the devil because he seems to be like a Democratic frontrunner for the presidential nomination. He is not even close to my first choice, but if he wins the nomination, there are way, way worse politicians that could be presidents. And so I will be fucking caping Newsom to fucking death if it's between him and any Republican. Odinson says, should we stop/cut funding for the defense budgets of foreign countries and allies? I mean, where it makes sense for us, but it definitely makes sense for us to fund the defense budgets of other countries when it is in our interest. Like, we are making, 100% back on our investment in Ukraine, for example, in that it is straining Russia's resources to be engaged in that Pyrrhic war that's going on. Me says, overhyped as the devil, haha. Yeah. Political Pablo says, what's your first choice? I go Chris Murphy, but he probably won't get the nomination because he's not like, he doesn't have high name ID. He's just a keep your head down and do the fucking work kind of politician, and I really appreciate that. Max says, do you think we should tax churches, synagogues, etc. if they are involved in political speech? Then yes. Blake D says, who the fuck is Chris Murphy? Exactly. He's the senator from Connecticut. Fletch Lives Again says, Dems cover a much larger range of demographics than Republicans. Another way to say it. Yeah, they are a big tent, which means that people will yell at Democrats for being too far to the left because they look at people like AOC, and they'll yell at Democrats for being too far to the right because they look at people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And it's like the Democratic Party isn't too far to the left or too far to the right. It is both too far to the left and too far to the right. It encompasses a wide spectrum of American beliefs, and that's not a bad thing, but it can seem like a bad thing if you're only focused on the part of the Democratic Party that you personally don't agree with. Alrighty, let's see here. Comrade Punk says, what if I told you that China's 94% satisfaction poll was anonymous and conducted by a European organization? I would say that satisfaction polls do not make it so that dictatorships are okay. If you really believe that China is a better place to live than America, go over there and start talking about Tiananmen Square and see how well you do. Go ask the Uyghurs how happy they are about living in China. Sphinx Egyptian says Stephen Colbert needs to interview Jasmine Crockett next since he interviewed Tallarico. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't. Like the only argument that I could see for not bringing on Jasmine Crockett is it might seem like acquiescing to the pressure that he was receiving from the Trump administration to not give airtime to one political candidate or something. It's leaning into this idea that talk shows need to abide by the equal time rule. But, that being said, there's no reason why he shouldn't have Jasmine Crockett on, except for it might seem like a capitulation to the authoritarian project of the Trump administration. D. Scott and Muzzking, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. D. Scott says she was on a couple of times already. Isn't that interesting? So it's not even an equal protection issue. It is just the fact that they did not want Stephen Colbert to have on James Tallarico because they probably view him as a larger threat. Right. John Abbott says, in my opinion, for Democratic presidential candidate, I think we really need someone who mostly isn't known outside of their own states. Well, that's Chris Murphy in a fucking nutshell. Odin Son says, what is a topic you wish the public knew more about? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Generally speaking, I wish that they could recalibrate how they feel about the political parties. Like, Democrats never get any credit. Republicans never get any blame. We can never judge Democrats too high, and we can never judge Republicans too low. It's like, I wish that we would judge the Republican Party half as hard as we judge the Democratic Party. Period says, if the presidential candidates are Newsom and GD, who would you vote for? Newsom every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Jeffrey Shelton says, do you have any opinions about AO? Is that AOC? Did you misspell AI? Blake D says, if Dems nominate someone too far to the left, they will lose again. Completely disagree, because people will argue that Kamala Harris was too centrist, and that's the reason why she lost. Blake D. I do not believe that there is a too far to the left candidate that America would not prefer over a Republican. But yeah, there's all sorts of reasons why politicians win or lose elections. Being too far to the left or too far to the right, I do not believe is actually part of the equation. Blake D says, how did Biden win then? That is an excellent question, Blake D. So I believe that there is a combination of factors there. I believe that some people viewed Biden as more electable than someone like Bernie Sanders, and so they voted for him in the primary. And then there are centrist Democrats who voted for Biden in the primary because they just liked him better. But there is sort of like politicking and, political commentary happening in Democratic voters' minds where they're like, I like this person better, but I think this person can win. So Biden then wins the nomination, and because Trump did such a disastrous fucking job as president, he loses the election. Jeffrey Shelton says, do you have any opinions about AOC running for president? I think that she would be great. I think that there's some headwinds there because she has been scapegoated by the right ever since she appeared on the scene. But yeah, young people love her. She attracts the same kind of people as the Bernie Sanders crowd, and he was very popular as well. Yeah, I don't know if she wants to, though. I don't know if she wants to do this now or wait till later or run for Senate first. I have no idea. Blake D says, the Democratic Party has sabotaged the rightful nominee multiple times. So I would respond to that, Blake D, as yes, but I don't think it actually affected the elections. Like, if you look at how the wide margins by which both Clinton and Biden won their nominations, I do not believe that the chicanery of the DNC actually affected the outcomes all that much. Oh, let's see here. Blake D says Bernie in 16. Yes, yes. No true nomination in 2024. Blake D, are you one of those people that believes that the 2024 christening of Kamala Harris was like a slap in the face to the Democratic Party base? Or are you like me and believe that the Democrats had no other option but to nominate Kamala Harris? Period says, how do you feel about creators like Hassan Piker saying they'd vote third party in a JD versus Newsom race? I think that it is wildly irresponsible. I think it is psychotic. I think that people that do not recognize that better is better and worse is worse are toxic to our politics. And if I really want to go deep into conspiracy theory shit, I would be like, those people are being paid by right-wing agitators to make it seem as though voting for Newsom is like the worst sin of all fucking time. This is the exact same shit that happened during the 24 election when people were like, I can't bring myself to vote for Kamala Harris because of Palestine. And I'm like, really? Because there's Palestinians right now who would fucking beg you to go back in time and vote for Kamala Harris if they could. Because they're getting fucked right now. Renee Good's family, fucking Alex Preddy's family, they would fucking beg you to vote for Kamala Harris. And same fucking shit for fucking Gavin Newsom versus JD Vance. I guarantee you that the people who are getting fucked by Republicans right now are not going to sit there and say, well, I'm really glad that you stood by your morals and fucking voted third party or didn't vote for the centrist or fucking whatever. Yeah, that shit really fucking pisses me off because I'm just like, because there are people who are dead right now because of that. All right. Taking a chill pill. Okay. Sphinx Egyptian says some Hassan takes are great, but man, he really loses me sometime. Hassan hates music. Can't trust him. He hates music? Is that what he said? That's fucking bananas. Selman Aziz says thoughts on the Iranian regime. I mean, it's clearly an oppressive regime. They've been murdering their protesters. I support the revolution. I hope that they can make it happen the way that the revolution was successful in Syria. Chili Willy, Muzking, Aaron Gregory, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Alrighty, let's see here. Lauren. No, but I mean, if I get angry at that, then I start getting into fights with people in the chat, so, Blake D says, the real solution is a two-party system going away, but that won't happen. It can happen, Blake, if we vote for Democrats. Democrats are open to ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is the way that we introduce new political parties to a system without them being spoiler candidates. Are you willing to vote blue no matter who so we can get ranked choice voting so that we can have other options besides Democrats and Republicans? Let me know what you think about that. Blake D says Democrats will not allow another party. I got to tell you, Blake D, you're starting to get me because it's like you are completely blind to the positives of the Democratic Party, and you are making assumptions about the Democratic Party that do not line up with history or their current platform. You are making this blanket statement that Democrats will never allow another party. Really? Because they are doing ranked choice voting in states. I know you're a Democrat, Blake D. I think you might be a bad Democrat, though. If you are casting these kinds of aspersions at the Democratic Party, then I think you might be a bad Democrat. Trouble says, you are blind to vote blue. That is not a productive comment, so you are out of here. Block accounts. Blake D says, it's both. I don't know what that means. ABCDEFG says, would you vote for Bernie Sanders? You guys in the U.S. would really need him, not going to lie, from Italy. I mean, you got to fix your own, government in Italy before you start casting aspersions on America. But yeah, I campaigned for Bernie Sanders in both 2016 and 2020. Okay, Selfish Pro says Democrats favoritism lowest ranking in 30 years. That's not a productive comment, so you are out of here as well. It's the Rocketeer says I've just been muting the dorks. LOL. Do you want me to go straight to block? Yeah, you can go ahead and block, guy. That's part of your purview. Ecuadorian, great to see you again, says, I'm going to be honest, politics need to go in general. At this point, I'm tired emotionally, mentally. If politics is going to cause this much animosity, what's the point? Let's just get rid of it entirely. There's no getting rid of politics, my guy. So you can step away from it and take a break, or you can, roll up your sleeves and get to fucking work, All right, Riley says, are you concerned about demographic replacement in the U.S.? I don't really know, am I concerned that immigrants are going to come in and change the demographics of the United States? If that's what you're asking, then the answer is no. That's the whole point of America. Mia, great to see you again, says, Ho Dog says, I see you won't even touch the abortion issue. Yes, I will. I'm pro-choice. Even if you're pro-life, you still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies actually decrease the number of abortions, whereas Republican policies don't eliminate abortion. They don't even decrease abortion. They just make pregnancy more dangerous for women. I'm happy to go into more details if you like. ISC says, U.S. politics specifically or all? I am very knowledgeable about U.S. politics, and I have little tiny bits of knowledge about other politics. So if you ask about non-American politics, I may not be able to answer your question. Okay, Riley says, even if it's a quarter of the population, yeah, I don't care, Riley. Guns N' Roses says, I don't think immigration is good for Democrats. Do you mean like as an issue or generally speaking? I mean, I am not pro-immigration because I think it's good for Democrats. I'm pro-immigration because immigrants are a net positive for the country. And we're also on the teetering on the edge of population decline. And so we're going to need people to prop up the systems that we have built to work with this number of citizens, you know? Period says, Tallarico or Crockett? It's a very close game for me. I'm a little more Tallarico than Crockett, but also I don't live in Texas, so nobody should really give a shit what I think about it. It's up to Texans to decide whether it's Tallarico or Crockett. And as far as I'm concerned, they cannot make the wrong choice. I think they're both great candidates. User a whole bunch of numbers says, do you believe in rent control? If so, why? I do believe in rent control. I believe in policies that make life easier for the 99%. Now, there can be knock-down effects for rent control that can eventually bite the 99% in the ass. It is kind of a Band-Aid measure, the same way that the Affordable Care Act was a Band-Aid measure. And we need more structural changes, more big changes besides rent control, so that we don't have the issues that make rent control necessary, like massive cost of living increases, cost of living crisis, massive income inequality, shit like that. Oh, excuse me. Okay, Real Bennett says, can you discuss how we could even out the wealth disparity in the U.S.? What other methods besides tax? I suppose like regulating how much profit a company is allowed to make without increasing the benefits or pay of the lowest paid worker. Some people have proposed making it illegal for the top paid employee to be paid more than like 100 times what the lowest paid employee is. Putting the lowest paid employees on the board of directors so that they have a say in what the company does. Incentivizing companies to be employee owned, the way that Publix grocery store is, or the way that Bob's Red Mill is. What was it? Well, I forgot what even your question was. Wealth disparity. Yeah. But a lot of that is just, we are going to have to fix income inequality and wealth inequality in America. And part of that is going to be taxing the rich, increasing taxes on the rich. Bino says, are you left or right wing? I am left wing. Massimo says, these are all bad, right? We agree. I don't know what you mean by that. Period says, do you think government should be able to tax people's money that they hold in stocks? Yes, but I don't want to criminalize the 99% for trying to make smart investment decisions for their retirement. I do want to punish billionaires who are using their stock holdings to skirt paying income taxes. So however the legislation needs to be written to make that happen, that's what I want to happen. Some dude says, what do you think should be done about these right-wing billionaires buying up media companies? I believe that we need a robust FTC breaking apart monopolies. I think we need a robust FCC, making sure that not one person is in charge of every news and media organization like Sinclair. It is antithetical to the free market ideals and also protecting the fourth estate. Bino says, how far left are you? I mean, it depends on who you ask. If you ask somebody on the right, they probably say that I'm extremist. If you ask Hassan Piker, he'll probably say that I'm a centrist. So I consider myself to be a progressive Democrat. Ronnie says, Kamala wouldn't have been able to expose the truth. She/we are owned by the billionaires. That is inaccurate, Ronnie. I'm happy to go into more details on that if you like. Period says, thoughts on voter ID. Voter ID is a right-wing voter suppression tactic. It is not intended to maintain election security or integrity. There's no problem that voter ID solves except stopping certain people from being able to vote. We know that this is true because in red states, the Republican Party has closed down DMVs in Democratic areas, making it more difficult for people to get IDs so that they will not be able to vote. Additionally, we have testimony from right-wing politicians saying that they did voter ID in order to win elections and not to protect election integrity. Alrighty, let's see here. Blake D says, just stop, man. Voter ID is common sense. You are so fucking sus, Blake D. You are the most sus. You're a Democrat. You're a Democrat criticizing the Democratic Party and saying that voter ID is common sense. Congratulations, Blake D. You are in question jail. Everything that you say going forward has to be a question or you are blocked. Congratulations, my guy. You're an old school Democrat. Congratulations. That was your last statement. If the next thing that you put is not a question, then you're fucking out of here, my guy. Randy Barber says, in order to register to vote, don't you need to provide ID? You do not. Elizabeth says, what's your favorite U.S. president and why? Everybody's saying voter ID is common sense. You are wrong. You are wrong, and you are wrong about this. I don't want to be a dick, but I want to be clear about this. It is unnecessary. Voter fraud happens in 0.00001%. It is not a real thing. The Republican Party is lying to you about needing voter ID. The Republican Party is lying to you about the reason why they want voter ID. It is a voter suppression tactic. They are lying to you. They are lying to you. Riley says, why would you be against it, though? Because it's a voter suppression tactic. Because it keeps people from voting. That is the point of it. Citizens. I'm not trying to get illegals to vote here, guys. Voter ID does not stop voter fraud from happening. Robert the Great says, what should we do about a politician who lies their way into office? We should unelect them. Josh says, how does it keep people from voting? Because IDs are not free, and depending on where you live, they are very difficult to get. There you go. Alrighty. Josh says, disagree, keeps people without ID voting. Maybe it's poorly, but you can't remove it. Josh, that doesn't make any sense. Odinson says, what's a good alternative to voter ID? No voter ID. Give people IDs for free. Give them for free, make them easy to get, and then I'll be on board with voter ID. But the reason why the Republican Party isn't down with that is because they don't want them to be free and easy to get. They want them to cost money, and they want them to be hard to get. That is their point. Let's see here. Robert the Great says, yeah, but what if we can't remove them afterwards? What do you mean, what if we can't remove them afterwards? Burdan says, should Iran be free? Every country should be free. Guns N' Roses says, what? Voter IDs are paid? Yes, they are. Depending on what state you live in, they can be as much as $80. Blake D says, no state government would want free IDs left or right. Congratulations, Blake. You're fucking out of here, man. Can I just say how I fucking clocked Blake D so fucking quick? This guy's like, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a Democrat, but sus as fucking hell, man. I'm like fucking Svengali over here. Fucking, ugh. Yeah, man. Good Lord. And I gave him so many chances. And I gave him so many fucking chances. Robert the Green says, we have to wait 4 years to vote again. That is not true. There is midterm elections in 2026, presidential elections in 2028. The Fixer Mike says, passports should be free, real ID should be free, birth certificate should be free. I actually don't have a problem with any of that. Maybe passports we can charge for, because that's, you know, not really as necessary for living life in America. It's just if you want to leave the country, you would need that. Guns N' Roses says, why are you so against people with nuanced opinions? I'm not. Robert the Great says, Mamdani or whatever. Mamdani. Sam says, no hate at all, but what if someone comes from a different country and votes? They don't have an ID. If they're coming from a different country, if they're not a citizen, then they are not on the voter rolls, meaning they will not be able to vote. If you guys think voter fraud is so easy, then do it. Go try and do voter fraud. I'll see you in jail. From the outside of jail. I will be looking into jail at you, where you are in jail. Forerunner says, can you explain what a poll tax is? Absolutely. So poll tax have their origin in the Jim Crow South, where they were trying to keep the recently freed black population from being able to vote. So white people would come and vote, and then black people would come to vote, and they would go, oh, it costs $5 to vote. And they would go, well, I don't have $5. And they're like, well, sorry, you can't vote. And they would also do like these fake intelligence tests where they would say like, you're only allowed to vote if we can tell that you can count. So tell us how many jelly beans are in this jar, and they wouldn't make the white people do that as well. That is basically what voter ID is. It's a new poll tax. Some dude says, why do you think we are automatically registered for selective services but not to vote? Because politicians do not want you to vote. Right-leaning politicians generally want you not to vote more than left-leaning politicians. Brady says, why do some leftists and liberals have moral superiority complex? Excellent question, Brady. So it is possible that some leftists and liberals have a moral superiority complex. I mean, it does kind of make sense if you are on the right side of history, if the things that you are arguing for are more morally sound. It is possible that you look at somebody who is fine with children getting shot in school so long as they can keep their AR-15, and you are fine with ICE deporting children who are on ventilators to Mexico, that you are fine with the president having a fucking crypto coin and accepting bribes from foreign nationals, then yeah, we're kind of morally superior. But that being said, I don't think this is as big of a problem as the internet is making it seem. Because I think we could all agree that somebody being smug about their moral superiority is really annoying. And you don't want to be associated with people that are annoying, and you might view that as being a black check mark on their political party. So if you are a really shitty right-wing billionaire and you want to smear the left and make it so it's not cool to be a left-wing person or a Democrat, could you potentially pay people to go on the internet and say that you're a Democrat and then act really morally superior and insufferable so that people get turned off from the things that you're saying and the party that you're supposedly a part of? Kind of makes sense to me. Kind of makes sense to me. And I will point you to this fucking Blake D fucking ding dong. Clearly a fucking billionaire right-wing plant. Unfucking believable, that guy. JP says, Steve H. summed it up well. Conservatives protect their people. Liberals protect all people. Accurate. JP says, I'm in California. My nearest DMV is about an hour away and not free. An appointment is weeks away to schedule. Yeah, and that's in fucking California, man. Bo says, what's wrong with billionaires? Excellent question, Bo. So there's a couple of things that are wrong with billionaires. Oh, hey, I just got reported for harassment and bullying. Can anybody point to it? Is the harassment and the bullying in the room with us now? Seems kind of bullshit that I am just here saying fucking facts and talking about Blake D being a fucking paid bot. Who am I bullying, guys? Who am I fucking bullying, my guy? All right, so Bo asks, what's wrong with billionaires? This is what's wrong with billionaires. Are you still here, Bo? Let me know. The Mass says, why support either political party? They're both terrible. That is inaccurate, The Mass. Democrats are better than Republicans, and I can argue that 10 ways from Sundays. Okay, so the reason why billionaires are a problem is for a couple of reasons. Number one, the way that billionaires make their money is often through exploiting their workers. So they're not paying their workers enough. They're not giving them a large enough share of the profits that are only possible because those workers are doing that work. That's number one. Number two is money is not an unlimited resource. It is true that the Treasury does sometimes print more money in emergency scenarios, but that devalues the dollar and creates inflation. So we really try not to do that. So it's better to treat every single dollar as though that is one of an exclusive set of dollars that exist. And when you take all of the dollars and give them to like 5 people, you are creating these artificial, inorganic money droughts. It's the reason why poor people are so poor now. It's because billionaires are hoarding wealth that they got through ill-gotten gains. And lastly, the problem with billionaires is that they use their money to pay for politicians to win elections, and then because those politicians are indebted to them for giving them that campaign money, they then write laws to make it so that the billionaires can make even more money, and they cut their taxes, and they cut regulations for their businesses. There are all these billionaires out there that are like, I have to spend so much money making sure that the chemical runoff from my factory doesn't go into poor people's drinking water. I would love it if that regulation didn't exist. And then Republicans get elected, they cut that regulation, and now all of our water is dirtier and more carcinogenic. We're all getting fucking cancer just for drinking water, breathing air, eating food. That's the problem with billionaires, short version. Alrighty. Bo says, an example of a billionaire that's good or okay. All right. Here's the thing. There's no good billionaire because just having and holding $1 billion is detrimental to society and to America's economy. But if we're grading on a scale, any billionaire that is openly advocating for increasing their own taxes, like Warren Buffett, is a good billionaire. Any billionaire that is giving the majority of their money to charity is a better billionaire than, than the fucking Koch brothers, for example. Alrighty, Guns N' Roses says Newsom is fine. These leftists can't accept that people can do math. I also think that Governor Newsom is fine. The problem is that people on the left need our politicians to either be God or Satan, and they cannot accept that Gavin Newsom is okay and that okay is fine, depending on who he is running against. Massimo says, do you have one opinion that skews from the norm in the Democratic Party? I don't think so. The Democratic Party is a big tent, so my opinions are, held by some people on the far left and some people on the center left, and some people on the far left hate some of my ideas, and some people on the center left hate some of my ideas. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the Democratic Party platform is concerned, I would be hard to tell you what the daylight is between what I believe in the Democratic platform. I'm probably a little bit more dogmatic about switching to Medicare for all than the Democratic Party in general. I'm probably more aggressive about wanting to go after the ill-gotten gains of the billionaire class than the Democratic Party establishment. But generally speaking, I would say we're mostly in agreement. Mon says, hi, can independents vote in the midterms? Yes, they can. Some dude says, one of our biggest issues is how we teach a civil war where you're from changes what you learn. Yes, 100%. In the South, they teach the Civil War very differently than they do in the North. Yorkie says, why is Newsom unacceptable for California missing money? I don't know what that sentence means, Yorkie. Sam says, how can I better educate myself on politics? Excellent question, Sam. What I would do is I would find a daily news wrap-up podcast. So something that's like 30 minutes or so where they go through everything that happened during the day. I think NPR has one. I think the Associated Press has one. I listen to one called What a Day, which is Crooked Media's daily news roundup podcast. And just listen to that every day. And hopefully you will start to pick things up through osmosis, like who the people are that you should be paying attention to, what the various agencies do, what the role of the government is, stuff like that. And then, depending on how you do with that, then you can start, like reading newspapers and, try to get your sources from a bunch of different places so that you can avoid any kind of bias. The only place you shouldn't get your news is from right-wing media, because we have data on this. Right-wing media is the least accurate media that exists. Anthony Souza says, are you from California, born and raised? But I have also lived in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York and London. Guns N' Roses says, if you don't want your governments to run out of money, then maybe don't force them to spend too much. Or we can just tax the billionaire class. That seems like a pretty interesting idea to me. Randy Barber says, do you believe it could happen to return to the vote results be the winner? Can you clean up that sentence, Randy? I don't really know what you're trying to say there. Opinionated Minority says, why is Israel allowed to lobby with AIPAC? So AIPAC does not have to register as a foreign lobby because they are funded exclusively with American dollars. And so, while there is no daylight between the agenda of AIPAC and the Netanyahu government, they do not technically have to register as a foreign lobbying organization. All right, Mia's Lovely Adventure says, or we could find out why Trump is taking $10 billion from the IRS. There we go again, guys. Guns N' Roses says, tax the billionaires until they flee to Texas, and then the government would have nobody to tax. Being in Texas does not mean that billionaires don't have to pay federal taxes. It just means they wouldn't have to pay the state taxes in Texas. And if every billionaire wants to move to Texas and live off of the 99% that live there, then fucking do it. Fucking go crazy. We'll see how well that works out for you in the long run. Yorkie says, why do Democrats states overtax us? I do not believe that they overtax us. I believe that they tax us and then we get things in exchange for that money. I will take the education and healthcare outcomes in California over the education and healthcare outcomes in Alabama every fucking day of the week. Alrighty, Brady says, what's going on in Iran? There is a revolution going on right now. A bunch of people from a bunch of different demographics are very upset about the ruling party, and so they are protesting. The ruling party is murdering the protesters, and, it's an open question how this is going to end. Guns N' Roses says Democrats do overtax people because they spend money carelessly. They do not spend money carelessly, Guns N' Roses. If you're in question jail. If you don't ask a question next, you're out of here. Should PACs be allowed? S period. No, they should not. Sphinx Egyptian says, I hate progressive taxes too, but I will still vote for Democrat over these MAGAs any day, any time. Why do you hate progressive taxes, Sphinx Egyptian? Are you a extremely wealthy person? MZell says, solution to taxing billionaires whose wealth is held in unrealized gains. There are other ways to tax billionaires besides taxing income. I am not a legal expert, so I can't tell you what the legal ramifications would be of trying to tax somebody's unrealized gains, but we can do things like that in order to even the playing field. Storm, Money and Storm says, Democrats spending money on social programs counts as overspending. That's not a productive comment. It's also false, so you're out of here. Mickey C says, do you think Trump will be successful in cheating on the midterms? Whether he's successful or not, Mickey, depends entirely on whether you and I do the work of stopping him. The Democratic Party does not have enough resources or power to do this by themselves, so we have to do the work. We have to make sure that this election is too big to rig, that we have massive voter turnout, and that those people who are voting for Democrats. We have to be putting pressure on our state representatives to make sure that they are not going to allow Trump to steal the election. Make sure that they have contingency plans for if the FBI tries to steal voting machines. If you are living in a state who uses electronic voting machines that are owned by that one dude who's a big fucking MAGA guy, then you need to be on the phone with your Secretary of State and say, how can I be sure that my votes are being counted accurately? Because the dude that owns the fucking voting machines is a big fan of Donald Trump, who is open to stealing and cheating to win elections. Alrighty, Sphinx Egyptian says, property taxes. My mom had a small business and she was taxed high. Yeah, I don't know how we adjust the scales there, Sphinx Egyptian, so that people that have small businesses or people that inherit houses that they can't afford don't then have to lose that property because they can't afford to pay those taxes, you know? I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely don't agree with that, you know? Like, I think that any policy that we institute should be one that redistributes wealth from the top 0.1% to the rest of us. And if there are flaws in our progressive tax structures where people are still suffering from those taxes, then we need to fix that. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom. D. Scott says payroll tax is a huge hindrance to small businesses. Yeah, I get that, D. Scott. Again, you know, we got to fix that. We got to fix that. You know. Right. Alfrey says, are you aware that what is considered left wing in America is center right in Europe? You know, I have heard that, Alfrey. I don't buy it though, because we have progressives here in America. Maybe if you're talking about people like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, I'll give you that. But the Democratic Party is a big tent. And so we have our Chuck Schumer's and we have our AOC's. Alrighty. Period says, do you think raising the minimum wage is a solution to closing the wealth disparity? I think it's a solution. I don't think it's the only solution. I don't think that by itself will do the job. Because, you know, we could raise the minimum wage and then companies could just pass those, pass that expense on to the consumer. Opinion of Minority says, we should take California worker rights laws and implement them nationwide, 100%. Yorkie says, why do Democrats have blue hair, lots of piercings, and yell a lot? Not every Democrat does. There are plenty of Republicans who yell a lot. I can send you as many clips as you like. There are also plenty of Republicans that have tons of piercings and tattoos. I bet I could find you some Republicans with blue hair. I don't have blue hair. What is your deal, Yorkie? Randy Barber says, my question to find better, have winners sworn in as president, second place as vice president, both parties be administrators. Oh yeah, I mean, we did kind of have that system at the onset of America. I don't know if America is interested or willing to institute that kind of change. Guns N' Roses says minimum wage will hurt younger people. You know, the people that vote Democrat. Congratulations, Guns N' Roses. You are out of here. You have annoyed me to the point where I no longer believe that you were here in good faith. Lost a Fat Boy says, do you think they very likely war with Iran is justified? I do not think that war with Iran is justified. Lost a Fat Boy. What's up, Average Joe? Great to see you again. Have you considered pinning or using a chatbot to occasionally repeat answers to the most common questions? That's an interesting idea. I do like repeating stuff for people that are new, but yeah, it's an interesting idea. Let's see here. Greasy says, how do we get rid of tariffs and the consumer tax taking on the tax expense in America? to replace the Republicans that are in office with Democrats, because the Democrats are the ones that will undo the tariffs that Trump is currently doing. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, we're right at an hour, and I just lost all steam. So sorry. Ty Taylor says, why do Republicans pretend to accept people of color? Because they believe that it is politically invaluable, that it is politically not good to be openly racist. And so they pretend to accept people of color in order to win elections. Randy Barber says, bullied Guns N' Roses, watch out. Massimo says, what do you think about the quality of food we get, even middle class? It could be better. I think we need to be moving away from a structured economy that is structured to make it so that processed and ultra processed food is the easiest and cheapest food to get. Yorkie says, why do schools teach transgender to children in grade school? Well, we don't teach transgender to children in grade school, but it is possible that some schools let children know that transgender people exist. Do you think that that is a problem, Yorkie? Do you think that we should not be letting children know that there is a demographic of human beings called transgender people? Do you think that that is a problem, Yorkie? Flamingo Mo, great to see you again, says, can I continue to hate Donald Trump more and more every day, or would eventually just button out? Nah, I think there's always, the sky's the limit. Some dude says, do you see the support for Trump will be seen as similar to the support of the Iraq War was? Yes. Yeah, there's a dude who wrote a book called Someday Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. And so, yeah, I think that we need to be open to people changing their mind about Donald Trump. But then I think we also need to incentivize them to actually do the work to undo the damage of what the support of Donald Trump did in the past. BitNevo says, if ambition were a substance, Marco Rubio would still last forever. Very fun. Lost Fat Boy says, sorry, I'm not trying to instigate anything. I just think independent media is the only right form. Just curious. I like this guy. I like you too, Lost Fat Boy. So yeah, let's talk about independent media. Independent media can be good. The problem with independent media is that it does not have the weight of needing to be accurate as legacy media. Like, the value of an establishment like the New York Times is that they have journalistic standards for accuracy, and if they ever fuck up, they tell people, hey, we fucked up on that story. There is not that same thing with independent media. With independent media, so long as you're getting clicks and likes, you're doing your job. And so while I think there are great independent reporters out there, it is essential that you supplement independent reporting with mainstream legacy foreign media, etc. Mzel says, who do you think the Democratic primary will be in 2028? I have no idea. Nobody does. Thank you, Barry Lane. Appreciate you being here. Greasy says, I think there is a movie or documentary on how the whole Iraq war was a scam. I'm sure there was. David Douglas says, independent media has limited resources for in-depth analysis and reporting. That is also accurate. Anthony Souza says, I think the Dems need to capitalize on how unpopular Trump is amongst regular right-leaning people. Anthony Souza, it's an interesting idea, and I do think there is value to talking about that. The problem is that no matter what Democrats do, they get yelled at. And so if we go to right-wing people and we say, look at all the shitty things that Donald Trump is doing, then everybody's going to say, well, we need you to tell us what you're going to do. You can't just be the anti-Trump party. You got to be the party that actually has some plans, And then they tell them their plans, and they go, you're boring me. Trump's on the news. I'm just going to go watch the news, So it's like, yeah. This is my whole fucking point, guys, which is that the narrative is that Democrats can never be good enough for us, and that they are simultaneously too far to the left and too far to the right and doing too little and doing too much. There is never a mistake that the Republican Party can make that will be large enough where people will not vote for them, or where people can't use that to justify voting against them, The COVID pandemic was so unbelievably fucking mishandled. That should have been the end of the Republican Party. And in 2020, Democrats got control of the government, but just barely. That should have been a fucking blowout. We should have flipped Florida and Texas that year. It's fucking psychotic that it wasn't. Since the Reagan administration, the Republican Party has been cutting taxes for the wealthy and cutting taxes for giant corporations. Time and time and time again. That should be the end of the Republican Party. Why is that not a fucking bigger deal? The last 3 recessions and financial crashes have happened all under Republican administrations. Why are people still voting for them? Because they believe in the economy. The Trump administration stole children from parents and then lost the parents in different countries. Why is that not a deal breaker for people? Why do people think of the Republican Party as the party of national security when they let 9/11 happen? The economy crashed during COVID, but people go, well, that was COVID. It wasn't really his fault. What? No, it was his fault. He let COVID get out of control. It happened under his watch. It was his fault. But meanwhile, there is not a single problem that people cannot somehow connect to the Democratic Party. Donald Trump sat 3 Supreme Court justices whose entire purpose of being was to dismantle Roe versus Wade. And then they did that. And people yelled at Democrats. Why didn't you protect Roe versus Wade? What the fuck are you talking about, guys? This has been a Republican plot for the last 50 fucking years. Republicans fucking instituted it. They fucking did it. Maybe if you had voted for us instead, this wouldn't have fucking happened. You ever think about that? Oh, boy, I'm really on one today, guys. All right. Short says, can you explain how he failed? I thought Operation Warp Speed was Trump's only success. Yes, I will give the Trump administration credit for Operation Warp Speed, though I'm sure he does not deserve any of it. But here's how he fucked up. When he was elected during the transition, the Obama team gave the Trump administration the playbook for here is how you deal with global pandemics. And they threw it in the fucking trash. There were government organizations that were dedicated to stopping pandemics, specifically ones that start in China. And the Trump administration dissolved them. And when COVID started happening, and it really seemed like it was going to be a fucking thing, you know what the Trump administration did? You know what the federal government said? They said every state for them fucking selves. There was nobody organizing. Nobody was in charge of making sure that we had plenty of PPE. And they were out there telling people, don't listen, don't wear masks. Go to your fucking favorite restaurants. It's going to be gone in a couple of weeks. Don't fucking worry about it. It was his fault. Massimo says, what was Operation Warp Speed? It was the way that they developed the COVID vaccine. Yorkie says, you think Rona was controllable after it was spread all over the world? Congratulations, Yorkie. You have annoyed me. Alrighty. Mia's LV Adventure says he was going to go away when it got warm magically. Yeah, remember that? Randy Barber says, don't need to protect children, but you must protect the fetus, ? I don't really know what that is in reference to, Randy. Oof. John Abbott, that is extremely funny. I definitely want to film a fake Snickers commercial where it's like, eat a Snickers. Sometimes when you're hungry, you become angry, Jarrett, instead. Beaverino says, do you think we'll have fair midterms or will Trump station National Guard claim insurrection? Trump is going to try to lie, cheat, and steal his way into electoral victories in 26. That is why we have to do the work of making sure that we are prepared for all the things that he's going to try to do. We're going to call our secretaries of state and we're going to say, what are our contingency plans? We're going to call our secretaries of state and say, how can I be sure that my vote is going to be counted? And we go out there and we recruit more people to vote for Democrats so that the election becomes too big to rig. Randy Barber says, in reference to right-wing stance on the abortion ban. Yes, 100%, Randy Barber. I am with you. Alrighty. Memzel says, should politicians be able to trade stocks? No. Scrolling up. Alrighty. Let's see here. David Douglas says, to be fair, Obama said protecting Roe wasn't a priority when he had the House and the Senate. That is an excellent point, David Douglas, but let's think about what that really means. The Obama administration had a supermajority in the Senate for all of 8 months, so they had limited window to do what they wanted to do. We believed that Roe versus Wade was legal precedent and that it would never get overturned. So why would it need to be protected? Additionally, did we have in that 60-seat majority enough Democrats who were willing to vote for a bill to codify Roe versus Wade. I don't believe that that's the case. I believe that there were Democratic senators in red states who would have viewed that vote as a death sentence to their career. Maybe if they did not believe that Roe versus Wade was impenetrable, maybe we could have convinced some of those senators to do the right thing and take that vote. But with the common sense, with the consensus being that Roe versus Wade was untouchable because it was legal precedent, why would it be necessary to codify it? You know? D. Scott, Muzzking, Chili Willy, Aaron Gregory, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And, we're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. So we're just going to do 20 high bears for my last gift goal. CS says, thoughts on packing the court. I'm against packing the court, but the Republican Party has packed the court. So now we have to rebalance the court by adding seats to undo the packing that the Republican Party did. Period says, should presidents be allowed to appoint Supreme Court justices? I mean, that's the only way that we get them. I'm open to hearing arguments for a different system, but that is always how we get Supreme Court justices. Always sad. Thank you so much for helping me reach my first high bear goal of the day. I hope that you are sometimes not sad, always sad. Okay, Randy Barber says, socialism bad. If your house catches fire, call the for-profit fire department. Yes, I am with you 100%, Randy Barber. All right, guys, I'm going to start wrapping things up. Get in your final questions. Lost Fat Boy says, where's your mainstream? I get most of my questions on TikTok. So my apologies if I am sometimes missing the comments that happen on Twitch and YouTube. Lost Fat Boy says, I personally feel the left is only at a loss because it's so hard to agree on things. I don't love AOC, but I do think she is a good runner, but I'm pretty ignorant to what she is trying to push. I mean, I think that the left loses for a bunch of different reasons. For billionaire-funded right-wing propaganda reasons, for an unbalanced electoral system that gives Republicans advantages, for propaganda narratives that make it seem like the diversity of the Democratic Party is somehow a flaw. There's a bunch of reasons. I have a whole ass video about it on my TikTok. Oh, hey, look at that. Thank you, JP, for offering that material there. So to everybody who's still watching, if you would like to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling, but if you have the will and you have the means, the mechanisms are available for you. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send emotes on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch for free. It costs you $0, helps me out a ton. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Special shout out to all my regular funders, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, Patrick, Melissa, the two Seans, Dan Blackroyd, Pliff, Lauren, Triska, and It's the Rocketeer. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If there are any questions that you have that I was not able to get to on this live stream, do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for you guys to be more informed and more involved in politics. So reach out. Don't be shy. You can email me through my website. You can shoot me a DM. DMs are open. And you can join my Discord, which is another great way to get in touch. And there's great information on the Discord also for if you are looking for recommendations for books or podcasts, or if you want to join an organization that is already doing some of this work to try to stand up to the Trump administration. CS says, how do we organize a work stoppage? I think there's a bunch of different things that need to happen. We need to make sure that people don't starve to death or are not able to pay their rent because they are doing a work stoppage. And so setting up and contributing to mutual aid funds so that people have a place they can go when they need things is going to be essential for the work stoppage. But yeah, other than that, we just have to spread the word and get people to commit and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. People forget that the Rosa Parks bus boycott lasted a year. That was an extremely well-organized boycott. So if we want to do a strike like that going forward, we got to do the fucking work, Kina says, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice, and so why? I am pro-choice because I do not believe that a fetus is a life. But I'm also pro-choice because abortion bans only make pregnancy more dangerous for women. They don't actually decrease abortions. Ooh, righty, everybody. I am losing my voice, so I gotta get out of here. I got a little too hyped today, yelling about shit, yelling at that fucking ding dong that then reported me for no fucking reason. All right, guys, be good to each other. Do the work. You don't have to be a dick to other people to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self care is part of the work. I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great Wednesday, everybody. Take care. Bye bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.